Imagine being on a team bus. It's nighttime in Germany. The city of Dortmund is quiet outside the windows. You're 21 years old, far from home, speaking a language you barely know, and then suddenly, an explosion rips through the air. The bus shakes, windows shatter, chaos, terror, players scrambling. That was Mikel Merino's reality in April 2017. And if that sounds like the most dramatic thing that could happen to a young footballer just trying to prove himself, just wait. Because this story doesn't start with bombs or trophies. It starts in a small city in northern Spain, with a boy who grew up in the shadow of a legend, and had to figure out whether he was brave enough to step out of it. This is the full story of Mikel Merino. And trust me, it will shock you. His name is Mikel Merino, Zuzan. Born on the 22nd of June 1996, in Pamplona, a city in the Navarre region of Spain, famous for its bulls, its festivals, and its fierce pride. But in the Merino household, the thing that ran through the blood wasn't bulls, it was football. His father, Mikel Merino, was a professional footballer, not a casual weekend kick-around kind of player, a real, serious La Liga professional, who made over 500 appearances in his career, playing for clubs like Osasuna and Celta Vigo across 17 years. His mother, Maita, was a professional basketball player. His brothers played both football and basketball. Sport wasn't a hobby in the house. Sport was the language the family spoke. And yet, growing up as the son of a football legend in the very city where his father played is not as glamorous as it sounds. From the very beginning, Mikel carried something heavy, a name, an expectation. Wherever he went on the youth pitches of Pamplona, people already knew who he was before he touched the ball. He was Joe's son, and that can be a gift or it can be a curse, depending on what you do with it. He started out at a local youth club, called Amig, before making the natural move to Osasuna's famous youth academy, known as Taj Owner. And when he first arrived there as a child, something strange was happening. He wasn't physically impressive, not yet. He recalls being around 8 or 9 years old, technically good, technically sharp, but when the other kids started growing, when their bodies started catching up with their ambitions, Mikel fell behind. He was late to mature physically. The boys around him were getting bigger, stronger, faster, and Mikel, he had to survive on brains alone, on technique, on reading the game so well that his legs didn't need to be the fastest in the room. And here is where his father's wisdom became everything. Mikel Merino didn't panic. He didn't pull his son from the academy. He told him, be patient. Your moment will come. And it did. At 17 years old, Mikel grew, quite literally. In a single summer, he shot up. His body caught up to his mind. And suddenly, the most technically gifted kid in the academy also had the physical tools to match. But the journey ahead was about to get much, much harder. When you grow up watching your father play the beautiful game, you don't just fall in love with football, you absorb it. You watch it differently. You understand it at a deeper level. Mikel once said, football is my passion. Football is the reason I'm living with such intensity every single day. I love it. I cannot help but watch football, play football. I love having the ball around me. That love drove him through the Osasuna Academy. It drove him through training sessions in the rain, through early morning runs, through the moments when his body wasn't cooperating. He had a coach in his early years who focused heavily on the mental side of the game, not just tactics, not just fitness, but the psychology of competing. That left a mark on Mikel that never faded. And his father, he coached him during his time at Osasuna's academy. Can you imagine that? Having your father as your coach, the pressure of that, trying to prove yourself, not just to the world, but to the man who tucked you in at night. Mikel has spoken about how invaluable that was, not just in terms of tactics or football knowledge, but in terms of character. His father modeled how to handle failure, how to stay calm under pressure, how to keep going when it all feels impossible. That lesson was about to be tested in the most brutal way imaginable. At 18 years old, Mikel made his senior debut for Osasuna's reserve team in the Tercera División, Spanish football's 4th tier, and he worked his way up, slowly but surely, until he broke into the first team. 67 appearances, 8 goals, a kid from Pamplona writing his own story. Then came the big move. In July 2016, Borussia Dortmund came calling. Borussia Dortmund, one of the most iconic clubs in Europe. The Yellow Wall, the roar of 80,000 fans in the Westfalenstadion. Mikel Merino, 20 years old, packed his bags and moved to Germany. And that is when everything started to fall apart. He arrived at a club packed with superstars Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, Marco Reus, Mario Götze, Christian Pulisic, Ousmane Dembélé, Alexander Isak. The midfield was crammed with talent. There was no space, no breathing room. Manager Thomas Tuchel tried playing Mikel as a central defender, a position he'd never played in his career. He struggled. Appearances dried up. He was lost. And then came the night that changed everything, not in the way you'd hope. April 11, 2017. Dortmund were on their way to play Monaco in the Champions League quarter-final. The team bus was traveling through the city when 3 bombs exploded nearby. Defender Marc Bartra was injured. Players were shaking, terrified, some of them in tears. Mikel Merino was on that bus. Think about that for a moment. 20 years old, far from home, already struggling with his career. And now this. That kind of experience, that kind of fear changes a person. He managed just 9 appearances that entire season at Dortmund. He did win the DFB Pokal, the German Cup, so at least there was one piece of silverware, but his future, there was clearly not going to happen. So Dortmund sent him to England, to Newcastle United, on loan. No, Newcastle in the summer of 2017 was a club just promoted back to the Premier League under Rafael Benitez. And Mikel Merino, a 21-year-old Spaniard who just survived a bombing and a failed stint in Germany, arrived at St. James Park, and he was brilliant. He took to English football immediately. His interceptions, his passing accuracy, his ability to win the ball. He led Newcastle among players with 5 or more games that season in possession, regains and interceptions per 90 minutes. He scored a Premier League goal against Crystal Palace. He was comfortable. He was confident. Newcastle made the loan deal permanent within months. But then came the injury, a back problem, something that would hamper him and limit him to just 25 appearances across his time on Tyneside. And just like that, the momentum stopped. When he looks back on this period, Mikel doesn't speak about it with bitterness. He speaks about it with gratitude, because England made him harder. He once said, and this is remarkable, "When I was going to play, I was preparing myself mentally to go to war. In Spain, heading onto the pitch, you're thinking about tactics, positions, the ball. In England, I didn't think much about the ball. It was more about the battle. I'm who I am because of the Premier League. It made me harder." That hardness was about to become his greatest weapon. In 2018, Real Sociedad came in and signed Mikel Merino permanently. And it turned out to be the single best decision of his football life. San Sebastian, the Basque Country, a city by the sea, a club with identity, with pride, with a philosophy of beautiful football. This was where Mikel Merino finally, truly became himself. He settled, he breathed, he grew, season after season. He became more important, more powerful, more dominant. In 2021, he captained the team in a match for the first time. He won the Copa del Rey, the Spanish Cup, scoring an assist in the final and being named player of the match. He was becoming a leader. And then came the 2023-24 season, the season that blew the doors off. Mikel Merino won more duels than any other player in Europe's top 5 leagues. 326 duels won, 40 more than his nearest rival. He was the most combative, the most dominant, the most physically imposing midfielder on the continent. And yet he wasn't just a destroyer, he was elegant, technically precise, tactically brilliant. Arsenal were watching. And after the summer of 2024, Arsenal were not the only ones. That summer, the summer of Euro 2024, everything changed. Spain were building something special, a golden generation. Lamine Yamal, Nico Williams, Pedri, Dani Olmo. And in the middle of all that dazzling attacking talent, Mikel Merino was the engine, the warrior, the man who won the ball and gave it to the artists. Spain reached the quarterfinals. Their opponents, Germany, the host nation, 80,000 German fans roaring at them in Stuttgart. The game went to extra time, 1-1, tension unbearable. And then, the 119th minute, 1 minute from penalties, Dani Olmo drove forward, he whipped in a cross, and rising above the German defense, with perfect timing, with the conviction of a man who had survived far worse than this moment, Mikel Merino headed it home. The stadium erupted, Spain celebrated, and a nation that had watched this quiet, humble midfielder for years finally understood what they had in him. He ran toward the corner flag. He looked up at the sky, and there was this look on his face, not just joy, relief, the relief of a man who had been underestimated for too long. Spain went on to win Euro 2024, beating England in the final, and Mikel Merino, the kid from Pamplona, the boy who grew up in his father's shadow, who was left out at Dortmund, who got injured at Newcastle, who rebuilt himself quietly in San Sebastian, was a European champion. Less than 2 months later, Mikel Merino signed for Arsenal. £27 million. Number 23. Welcome to North London. And what happened next was something nobody quite expected. Mikel Merino didn't just feed into the Arsenal system, he elevated it. He showed a side of his game that fans hadn't even seen yet. When Arsenal needed a striker, Arteta turned to Merino and played him as a false nine. And he delivered 2 goals against Leicester City in a single match, rescuing 3 crucial points. A goal in Arsenal's stunning 3-0 victory over Real Madrid in the Champions League quarter-finals. Goal after goal at critical moments, in big games, under pressure. 44 appearances in his debut season, 9 goals, 5 assists. A player who could win headers, win duels, score elegant goals, hold the ball up, drive forward, and organize an entire midfield from the inside. And then in the 2025-26 season, Arsenal were crowned Premier League champions. Mikel Merino, Premier League winner, European champion, Copa del Rey winner, Nations League winner. The boy from Pamplona had won everything. Away from the pitch, Mikel Merino is as grounded as they come. He got married in June 2024, just 1 day before joining the Spanish national team for the Euros. His wife, Lola Liberal, has been by his side through some of the hardest moments of his career. He's a man who loves hiking, who loves traveling, who plays basketball with the same passion he plays football, keeping up his mother's sported legacy. He earns around £130,000 a week at Arsenal, making him one of the best paid players at the club. But those who know him say the money is the last thing that drives him. What drives Mikel Merino is the game itself, that love his father passed down to him on the pitches of Pamplona. Across those long conversations after every match, analyzing actions, finding improvements, staying humble, staying hungry. He still calls his dad after every game, still talks tactics, still listens. Ain't there have been moments of drama along the way? Of course, his time at Dortmund was turbulent. Questions about whether he could compete at the highest level. His back injury at Newcastle raised doubts about his durability. And at Arsenal, early in his debut season, he suffered a shoulder injury that delayed his start, making the fans anxious, making the headlines dark. But every single time, Mikel Merino came back, not just intact, but better. So, what does this man's legacy look like? It looks like the quiet player who never made the loudest noise, but always made the biggest impact. It looks like a midfielder, redefining what that position means in modern football, capable of dropping deep to start attacks, driving into the box to finish them, leading by example without ever needing a speech. It looks like a European champion, a Premier League winner, and a man who won it all not because football was handed to him, but because he outworked everyone who told him he wasn't good enough. His father played over 500 times as a professional. Mikel is building his own legacy now, and the extraordinary thing is he's only just getting started. Here is the thing about Mikel Merino that makes his story unlike so many others. He had every reason to give up. He was on the Dortmund bus when it was bombed. He was injured at Newcastle. He was underestimated for years. He was the quiet one, the consistent one, the one who never quite got the headlines even when he deserved them. But he never stopped believing, because his father told him to be patient, because a coach told him to trust the mental side of the game, because somewhere inside that kid, who was physically behind his peers at 9 years old, there was a fire that nobody could touch. And that is why, on a summer evening in Stuttgart, with the whole of Europe watching, Mikel Merino rose above the German defense in the 119th minute of a quarter-final. and sent Spain to the semi-final. That header wasn't just a goal. It was everything he had ever survived, everything his father had ever taught him, every injury, every rejection, every moment of doubt, all of it in one perfect, glorious moment at the top of his leap, with the whole world watching. Mikel Merino, European champion, Premier League champion, son of Pamplona, son of Joe. And the story, it's far from over.